Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Employment with Dennis Rice and Bill Gravel. Hopefully, I said that right. My name is David Blair, and I'll be your moderator today. This webinar is not a presentation, but an interactive question and answer period. For the next hour, Dennis and Bill will take any questions you have related to community engagement as a pathway to employment. Dennis co-founded Alternatives Unlimited in 1976, which is a nonprofit rehabilitation agency located in central Massachusetts and has served as its executive director since 1979. He led the steady growth of Alternatives from its original 3 programs to a comprehensive agency with more than 60 programs with a budget of $50 million. His expertise includes extensive work in the development and implementation of successful residential and employment services for adults with psychiatric or developmental disabilities. And Bill is the Director of Employment and Community Membership. Over the past 40 years, Bill has played a leading role in providing employment services for individuals with psychiatric and developmental disabilities at Alternatives Unlimited. His experiences over that time have included overseeing the transformation of sheltered work programs to supported employment programs in the community, directing a services for education and employment program, facilitating employment services within the community-based flexible support model, and developing employment resources within a clubhouse environment. Today's event is jointly funded by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research and the Center for Mental Health Services within the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The content of this webinar does not represent the views or policies of the funding agencies, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. During registration for the event, you were given the opportunity to submit a question in advance. Over the course of this webinar, we'll alternate between questions submitted in advance and the ones you have today. You may ask questions now by typing them into the chat box below. So welcome to the webinar, and I hope everyone enjoys the next hour. So welcome, Bill and Dennis. Thank you for taking your afternoon today.
We're delighted to be here. Just quick orientation. One is that the Alternatives has been affiliated with the Center for Psych Rehab since actually 1980 and have worked with them around a number of projects. So we're really proud of that partnership. The second thing is that Alternatives in this last year has affiliated with the Bridge of Central Massachusetts, just for clarification purposes. And together, those 2 organizations have a DBA of Open Sky Community Services. I just wanted to sort of clarify sort of the names. And I am the sort of Executive Director Emeritus Senior Advisor, so I've sort of kicked me upstairs in semi-retirement, and Bill has just retired from Open Sky Alternatives. And so we're just 2 old guys here to answer some questions.
That's fantastic. You know, before I start, could you tell me a little bit about the history of the organization, how it got to where it is now?
Well, again, we started in 76, as you mentioned, and we started with 3 programs, and it was sort of the beginning of the whole deinstitutionalization process. Basically, the state had been sued in class action suits to improve the conditions of the institutions, but also as quickly as possible begin to fund community-based services. So we got in at the beginning of that in 76 and basically have sort of grown, having to do with sort of the funding and closing of the institutions here in Massachusetts. So that's sort of how we've grown. We started just with residential, but then moved into employment, where Bill has been very involved. And we do serve both populations of people with psychiatric disability, but also people with developmental disability.
Well, thank you. So I'll turn to the first question then. Michelle asked, can you please explain how the C program works? And I think that's Services for Education and Employment.
Yes.
Okay, well, the C programs actually operated, I want to say, from 1997 to 2008, and there were about 25 of these programs throughout the state of Massachusetts. The different feature about them was, rather than just focus on employment, he says, there was education and employment. So it was kind of an exciting time, this new model, because we were really helping people realize other dreams of going to school as well as work. And in doing that, our program, we relocated from this Whitensville facility, and we actually got a downtown storefront building, downtown Milford. So we're right in the heart of the community. It was very mainstream. And just the idea of helping people, again, return to college, realizing that dream, in addition to doing some competitive employment, took hold. And we ran that for around 11 years, and then the state funding dried up, and those programs all closed throughout the state in 2008, and then we got kind of folded into the next model, the CBFS model. So very successful model. We did a lot of collaborating with Mass Rehab also, getting people employment, and our program had about 40 people we served on a regular basis.
We also had relationships with a number of the community colleges in the area, so that was also very beneficial in helping people be supported in their education.
And that program in particular, with the employment programs, helped us really start to do some of the more detailed community connecting with partners in the community. So we developed some good relationships with folks that we still have relationships with, and that led us down this path of really focusing on more of the engaging people in the community in the process.
You know, if the program is over, if you were to restart that program, you know, what would you do the same? What would you do differently? What would it look like these days?
There were a lot of good things about it. I mean, I think, again, as we built more momentum, we saw the more we got the community involved. So I think we would be more proactive on a lot of fronts with that. We would really make it truly engaging. Like we used to have this way of thinking that unless we're working with somebody from the community, it's incomplete. So it wasn't just staff helping somebody get a job, it was staff and partnering with people in the community. So I think as we got more into that, I think we would really accelerate that way of thinking and do a lot more interacting with the community. But it took us a little while because it was a brand new program, new model. So those first few years was really, we had to change away from the people we served for reliance on like subcontract work and more sheltered work. And for them, it was a big change of going out into more competitive type work situations. So there was a few years of transitioning people and then growing more and more with the community connecting aspects.
Sure. Danny in the room asks for Dennis or Bill, how much does the Rehabilitation Services Administration interact with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity? Is that something you guys know anything about?
I have no idea.
I'm unfamiliar with the RSA.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, it's fine. I wasn't sure if you'd know. He has a second question, so we can go on to that one. Has your organization had success with your local community colleges using a supported education model?
Yeah, we sort of already talked about that. Yes, no, we've been certainly the main one here in the area is Quinsigamond Community College. We've done a lot of work with them around a variety of initiatives, and they've been really helpful in sort of supporting the people that we serve in college. So that was a very good relationship.
But anyway, with Quinsigamond, when we did start the C program, that was one of the main colleges we've worked with. So we developed a good relationship with the disability office at Quinsigamond and placed a number of people in school there taking courses. Years later, as we were involved in the CBFS model, which was the next model, we actually collaborated with Quinsigamond and created actually something Dennis kind of spearheaded, an employment academy. And that was like an 8-week course we did on the campus where we brought people in, got them to kind of connect with people on the campus, students there. And we actually taught classes there on employment. And we did from the classroom, then we toured sites, and it was all a way of getting people more ready for employment. But again, that was a continuation of our relationship with Quinsigamond.
Right. We brought in speakers. We helped them with resumes. They did some job shadowing, and we also gave them a food credit to go eat in the cafeteria with all the other students. And that was a really interesting. We did that several times.
And both populations too.
Yeah, both populations. And a number of people, well, some jobs, but also several people then got interested to attending Quinsig, which was really neat. And some people were excited about getting their GED. Yeah. So that was an interesting, right.
Great. And he has a third follow-up, and I'll ask that and move on to the next one. Does your organization receive any funding from the State Department of Rehabilitation?
Yes, the rehab, yes, absolutely. We do. And with the new model for the Department of Mental Health, the employment is through Mass Rehab,
Right.
what we call Mass Rehab.
Excellent. The next question comes from Evan, and Evan asks, what advice would you give to an organizations that are still in the process of transitioning from sheltered workshops to integrated employment?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, you're right.
I say that in a way, but sometimes it is the need to kind of move and get into the community, because once you're there, then things start to build from there. And again, when going back to 1997, when the mental health program that I was overseeing left this Whitensville facility, that was kind of a risky move then, but we situated ourselves in the community, and then we were able to kind of build from there. Years later, our other programs, our programs that serve people with developmental disabilities, likewise set up, we call them career centers, in different locations, in downtown locations in different towns around here. So I think the need to kind of get out there and be around the community is very important. I think that's where it all kind of begins.
I mean, when the whole deinstitutionalization process started in '76, I mean, we did have a sheltered workshop, and it was meant to be a sort of a stepping stone to get people who maybe haven't done a lot of work interested in work. But again, although people for the first time maybe went home with a small paycheck, it was people just very much became isolated, very little very little sort of transition to the community. Not only did the people served get sort of institutional or reinstitutionalized, sort of in our wisdom, we took people out of an institution and put them back in an institution. But staff were sort of very stuck in that sort of situation. So as Bill said, we closed the workshop maybe, pushing 20 years ago, and set up these career centers, which was and they then left from we split. We had probably 200 people at its max in our sheltered workshop, and we set up several career centers that instead of serving 200 people, they were serving like 30, 35 people. And the other interesting thing having to do with the whole community connection piece, each one of these career centers tried to figure out how they can give back to the community. And so the one in Uxbridge is a art gallery. The one in Rentham was a community gardens. The one in Milford was a computer bank for the community. So each one sort of had their sort of goal of sort of giving back to the community. And when we did this, what was interesting is that we found that we were becoming much more part of the sort of community fabric, and over time, people would then come to us with job leads, which was, I think, a lot to do with the fact that we weren't just taking, we were also giving back.
Thank you. The next question comes from Samantha, and Samantha asks, what are some engagement techniques for individuals who are offered supported employment services but not currently interested? Income and community involvement are not their current goals.
Well, sometimes I think we, as much as we want people to be involved in the community, we certainly respect what people's choices to pursue. We've had a lot of situations for different reasons where people aren't willing to take that step. There might be fears they have of going out in the community, doing things, and there could be a lot of readiness issues around them making that type of commitment. So, I mean, in those situations, I think we try to increase people's awareness, whether it's sharing what other people are doing or still exploring with them their passions, their interests, talents they have. Sometimes uncovering that is the beginning step where then people realize something they have a strong interest in or talent that maybe could be demonstrated out in the community eventually. We've had that happen many times where people that are in residential programs that aren't looking so much to go out and get a job, or have a lot of support needs, but maybe are very artistic and creative, and staff can work with them on those aspects. And we've had situations like that where then some of their work might be shown in an art gallery that our agency has, and then people slowly but surely see the positive response they get from that. It starts to build the beginning steps of building their confidence, kind of thing. But so, I mean, I think it is kind of a readiness thing, and certainly increasing their awareness of their own abilities, but what's out there is something we would strive to do.
Sure, that has a lot to do with the psych rehab approach in what is called readiness, about self-aware, environmental awareness, commitment to change, et cetera. That we have used and found very effective in bringing people towards their goal of whether it's developing a friendship or getting a job or having a real home.
Great. This one's an easy one. Donna asks, Bill, are you from Rhode Island?
Yes. Why do they know that?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not quite sure, but I thought it was interesting. She just says, of course you are. Kim asks, because they too are from Rhode Island, apparently. Kim asks, how were you able to combine programs for the two different populations, serious mental illness and developmental disabilities, both in terms of funding and curriculum options?
Well, we serve them very, very separately, and the funding sources are also very separate. So there's the Department of Mental Health for the people with more of the psychiatric disability, and then there's the Department of Developmental Services for the people on the developmental to intellectual side. Mass rehab at times can actually serve both populations, but the Department DMH and DDS are funding sources. And
I was going to say the curriculum you mentioned too. We're referencing the academy we talked about before. Those were two very different types of curriculum were developed. The different populations we're working with. So we both were involved in the academy, but they were separate. There'd be certain days staff would take some of the folks in the mental health programs 3 days a week to the college, to the classes, and the other 2 days the staff on the DDS side would take us. So they had different approaches respecting the populations.
Great. The next question comes from Danny, and Danny asks, what are top 3 training areas for your directed service staff?
That's a good question. Well, I'll do one. We do teach a type of interpersonal skills, for staff to really demonstrate understanding for the individuals that we serve. It's Kharkov, if people want to know sort of the person that sort of developed this. And those trainings they start right in orientation, and there's sort of 3 levels of those interpersonal skills that we teach in sort of growing sophisticated in sort of how to respond to feeling and content and meaning. And those, I think, are crucial, not only in working with the individuals we serve, but it's crucial in working with staff. It's crucial in working with your significant other. And those are sort of those skills that have been helpful to me, although I don't always use them when I should be, but have been really critical in sort of my own development.
I think another type of training our agency has been very strong in is some of the community training. We at one time called it redefining community. So it's teaching staff how to help engage people in the community more. And there are two types of trainings actually that sprung out of that. One was more of a focus on how to help individuals make connections, so how staff could support individuals in making connections in the community. And the other one was how to develop partnerships with members of the community so we can kind of help them create opportunities for the folks we serve. So at one point, that was one training. It kind of branched off into 2. And where we stand now, that has kind of risen and become like a really training to be emphasized for all our staff as we try to get people more involved in the community.
I guess the third would be that, again, we've been affiliated with the center for, since 1980, and we certainly use the rehab approach on a daily basis in helping people get the skills and supports they need to be successful and satisfied in the community.
These are all great things. Kim, kind of following up with her, because she had asked one of the things she says that, thank you, I'm from West Virginia and would like to work on expanding our resources. Presently, we're graded a D for mental health resources. So there's a lot people can learn from the things that you two have been working on for the past 30 plus years now. I can't even do the math in my head too quickly.
Actually, it's 43.
43 years. Yeah, I was off by a decade.
And then 40.
Well, we'll skip that decade for your age at least. The next question is, why is it so difficult to help the people we serve to become active and contributing members of the community?
Yeah, that's a real, getting a job is certainly a really wonderful way of becoming connected. But, I think it's like, I'm not sure the exact percentage, but it's something like 20-25% of people with a significant mental illness, actually work even part-time. So, I might ramble a bit here, for the first, 20 years that Alternatives operated, we were, very proud of the work we're doing. We were very sort of dedicated to putting our efforts internally in helping the people, but we serve, get out of the institutions, etc. And although we always preach community inclusion, when we took a hard look at ourselves, that the people that we serve, as you just said, they were pretty isolated, almost living like in a whole other sort of parallel world, feeling unwelcome. And when we looked at Alternatives itself, that our energies were going inward, only asking outward for money. And then when we looked at the community itself, more and more, and Robert Putnam talks a lot about this, more and more the community itself were becoming isolated in that like people don't know their neighbors anymore. So the jobs, the homes, and the relationships that we want for the people we serve so they would be connected are in the community. So, when we looked at ourselves, we realized that we were much more of a bonding organization, and there's nothing wrong with the bonding organization, but basically it's our energies inward to sort of reinforce our identity for the private good. And what we needed to become, and which we've worked really hard on, is much more of a bridging organization where our energy is going outward to sort of collaborate and sort of work with those community assets for the public good. And certainly bridging is harder than bonding, because bonding are people that you already know and are alike. But bridging, I think, is more important if you're going to, connect with the community to help the people we serve connect. I mean, if we're not connected, how can the people we serve be connected? So we've spent a lot of time and effort in a number of initiatives that are much more bridging and connecting. And as we do that, we are helping the individuals. So for example, we encourage staff to make community connections and then use those connections to help the person that they're working with to become connected. And we also have this technology that Bill just talked about on helping the individual person get connected to a club or an association, or developing these community partnerships and working on sort of around a community interest or need. And again, it's that giving back process that we find so important because what it does over time is it builds reciprocity, that by us doing all these things for the community is much more open to who we are in providing those real opportunities for a home, a job, and a relationship that the individuals we serve deserve. God, boy, that was a long one, sorry.
Just to add on to that, earlier I mentioned that we've got the people we serve, we've got the staff, and we've got the community as the three groups that are involved in everything. So I jotted down a few things to that question, and what I saw is what makes it difficult to help people become active, contributing members of the community. From the individual's perspective, it's that it can be very fearful of the change and lacking confidence moving forward, and they might not know what, where, and how to be involved. So there's a lot of uncertainty on their part on how to move forward, so they require a lot of assistance. The staff that are supporting them also can find this very challenging to engage people in the community. Sometimes staff feel very safe working within a program, but as they have to go out and work more in the community, it requires a different set of skills. And they also the staff are in a position of providing support to the individuals and the community members, because as people get more involved, their support is kind of branching out more to support both groups now that they're working with. And the community members, from their point of view, we always hear the phrase of stigma of them changing negative beliefs about people with disabilities. So, I mean, there are three groups here when we say what makes it difficult that are all challenged in some way with this effort to move forward.
Thank you both. Danny asks, are you accredited with the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities?
Some of our programs are, and the Bridge of Central Mass is actually totally CARF accredited for all their programs. So I think the next round with CARF, that both organizations, both organizations will be CARF accredited.
Great. This is more of a statement. Go ahead.
Just to say something about CARF. I mean, I think the first time we were accredited with CARF was like maybe 83 or 85, somewhere in there. And CARF has been really helpful in sort of developing the infrastructure of our organization and setting up sort of accountable systems. So I think it's worthwhile for people to take a hard look at CARF and whether they want to be accredited or not.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Is how has the accreditation changed since the 80s? You know, what's different now? Is it the same basic principles, or what's the value that it brings to you?
I think it's the same basic principles. I mean, they have the sort of the administration side, the program side, and then looking at the individual. I mean, I think they've sort of expanded and changed sort of as program models develop. They too have developed in accrediting those models. Like when we started out, there wasn't supportive employment, and now they will look at supportive employment or shared living. There wasn't anything called shared living, and now I think they accredit shared living or a version of that.
Great. This one's more of a statement. Curtis, and someone else has a question following, so I'll read both together here. Try to merge things for you. We have integrated Robert Karkus. I don't know the last name well. The art of helping with our staff training for many years and find it to be very impactful approach. In addition to other approaches, for example, motivational interviewing, these integrate very well with the psychiatric rehabilitation model we use. And then Evan writes, does the Karkus translate well to working with individuals with IDD, or are there other curriculum resources you can recommend for training staff to integrate individuals with IDD into the community?
Well, we certainly do some computer stuff and talking that way through computers, which have been helpful. But no, I think Karkoff works well. Even people that are nonverbal, many of them can understand, although they can't speak. So the idea of responding to feeling and content to someone who is upset that you're feeling angry because whatever, I think can be very helpful in confirming the person's feeling, even though they can't necessarily talk back to you. So we have used that very much.
Tarek asks, what ways does your organization, or what ways do your organizations support and advise high-functioning persons with mental illness who work part-time, volunteer, live codependently, and receive government support, break free into professional and competitive work to be self-reliant, live independently, and develop and or maintain meaningful relationships? That's a long question. If I can reread it for you if you need.
You mean to become the perfect human being? Yes, we all strive for that. So, I mean, I think it's just part of the process.
I mean, I think it doesn't end when people, let's say, people get jobs. In some ways, a lot of our work really begins then, because now they're tasked with becoming more independent and transferring that support to others, but all the things that go along with it, supporting them on how to access other resources, dealing with SSI or benefit specialists and things like that, they're going to be crucial for them. And we generally follow along with people as long as we are needed, kind of thing. Just see that transition step where we're transitioning our supports to others in the community. Dennis had mentioned earlier that this year we're in the process with employment services of transitioning a lot of that in the direction of mass rehab. So the employment staff we have now, the department is working closely with mass rehab. So some of those responsibilities are going to be geared more in that direction. So it's similar to a lot of things that we try to provide that support as long as is needed.
I mean, just one more angle on that, in that when we talk about real homes, real jobs, real relationships. And so when we talk about real relationships, what we mean by that, and there's nothing wrong that an individual served has a relationship with staff or a relationship with someone else that has a disability. But if that's all they have, that's really limiting. And so with this emphasis on community connections and getting people involved in various associations or clubs, or basically contributing their sort of what they have to offer, their gifts and their talents within a valued role. Basically, that is helping that person develop their own social network that maybe isn't always connected to human services. As a matter of fact, I mean, it depends a lot on what they want to do, but to me, the more they have, in addition to whatever they have within the agency, develop connections, I think the better it is in helping that person sort of move along.
Donna asked, does your organization have funding for post-employment services?
Funding for well, again, if vocationally with mass rehab, I mean, there are aspects of mass rehab contracts that can provide ongoing supports.
Yeah, so ongoing support comes through mass rehab, not something they necessarily go through you for.
Right. I mean, once they graduate, yes, that is correct.
Rhonda asks, have you utilized a wellness recovery action plan for individuals who are working or going to work?
Yes, in fact, a few years back, our agency got involved where we began our first hiring some peer specialists, and we had like a coordinator of peer services, and that's continued on with the newer agency now. But in doing that, that was part of it too, because we had people in recovery that were in staff roles. So a lot of them had RAP plans and were in the process of kind of, with the people they support, get involved in helping them with that. And again, I'm sure that's continuing on now, because now there are even more peers throughout the Open Sky Community Services.
Great. Danny asks, and I'm just kind of going through a bunch of questions quickly here. Does your organization acknowledge or celebrate community employers who hire your job seekers? And if so, how?
Oh, yeah, no. We really like those guys. So we have, I mean, we do it sort of ongoing, but the big one, we have what is called a thank you reception, where could have as many as 800 people there, or alternatives have that, and I think they're trying to figure out how to do something similar with the combined organizations. But there'd be individual served awards, staff awards, but then we had a number of community awards, and a number of those awards would then go to employers that have hired individuals that we serve, either part-time or full-time, or have helped in advocating on our behalf to get other employers to hire the people that we serve.
And then can you talk, about other ways you engage the broader community? So not necessarily the clients you're serving, but the ways you engage employers or.
Community in general. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have what are called regional advisory councils, and those would be, there's some staff that are there too, but basically these would be sort of community leaders in a given geographical area. And basically their job is to sort of widen our circle of friends in that geographical area. They do that by, working on special projects. I mean, if they see something in the community that we could sort of tackle with another community, a non-human service, other community, I mean, they would be helpful in setting that up. We have what are called bridging grants that then would fund. Some examples of our bridging grants is that together with the Rotary Club in the north, and I think also the Lions Club and a couple of the schools, we, with a bridging grant, totally renovated a playground in the town or city of Gardner. In Worcester, we did a mural, again working with Quinsigham Community Center, volunteers there and volunteers from our side to then paint this beautiful mural of the Blackstone Canal. So there's several of these bridging grants that we then engage people, and our biggest thing where we engage is that we restored the Whiten Mill here in Whitensville, and besides it being our corporate headquarters and having affordable apartments and an employment program, it has a theater, it has a gallery, it has studios. It has a community plaza where we have free summer concerts. There are, I think it's 6 community theater groups that make it their home. We have all sorts of arts and culture sort of activities here at the Whiten Mill that is people ask, well, why did we do that? And because we had to raise a lot of money to restore this and renovate this mill. We raised over $4.5 million. And so I sort of have 2 answers for that. One is that, one of our highest priorities as a human service organization is to live in a more collaborative, diverse community with a strong sense of place. And we believe very strongly that the various activities and events that we have here at the Whiten Mill, contribute to that end. And the other thing is that by alternatives or back then alternatives, Open Sky taking sort of an active role in historical preservation, and one of the mills that we stored here is probably the second or third valuable mill here in the Blackstone Valley, which is, if people don't know, the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. It's very green, so what we've taken leadership in the green, with the turbine, the water turbine, the geothermal, and the panels on the roof, and then the arts and culture aspect. That by taking a leadership role in all of those for the community. I mean, to me, the community is much more open to who we are and helping us with those opportunities to get a home, to get a job, and to get a relationship for the people we serve. And sort of one way of sort of summing that up is it is all about reciprocity. It's something that we should all be working towards as we move forward.
And we have, years ago, Alternatives developed curriculum on this, as I mentioned before, like a twofold approach of helping individuals, but make their way into the community. But the second training was referred to as creating community partnerships, and I'm just reading off here, there are four, in that process, there are four main steps we take that have several parts to them. But the first one is we help identify neighborhood passions of folks in the community of who we can collaborate with. We engage with these organizations, the second one. Then we initiate joint projects, and then we celebrate successes. So this is curriculum that's developed in staff through alternatives all these years, and now Open Sky will be trained in these things because they're all challenged, all staff are challenged to take part in helping to create these opportunities in the community.
Can you guys, you touched on it a bit earlier, but you mentioned Open Sky and alternatives, and at one point you two have come together. How is that relationship working? How is that benefiting as an organization?
Well, it's, again, just to be clear, it's alternatives who have I mean, both organizations still exist, but who are affiliated with the Bridge of Central Mass. That is a very similar organization to alternatives. And
okay.
Again, the DBA is Open Sky, and of course. And we are, even though we're affiliated in two separate agencies, basically we are sort of merging the services and the programs under one management system. And it's, growing, whenever it's interesting how on paper we have very similar values, and we do, very similar mission, et cetera, but it's interesting when you come together with another organization, you do everything, no matter how small it is, differently. So there is and we're still in that. It's just been a little over a year. We came together last July 1st, so it's a year and a month that we've been together. So it's there's certainly a learning period, but my sense is that things are going pretty well.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Rhonda asked, do you work with staff on training and teaching staff on supporting other in acquiring life skills through how to break down skills and meet individuals where they are at or just right at the challenge for that individual? And if so, what training do you use?
Well, it made me think when you were describing that of our direct skills teaching trainings we've had that we got from our early years working with Boston University. On helping people break down skills into manageable steps and then routing them together. So that's been kind of just as like an interpersonal skills training, been a long-standing training Alternatives has put out there for all its staff to learn. Certainly necessary to help people in whatever environment, work or in their residence, develop more skills.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We would break that down, absolutely. I mean, using sort of the tell, show, do feedback format, which we were taught, again, using the ropes method.
I was trying to look for the program you mentioned to people on our website, and I couldn't find it, so I'm just going to drop a general link to people who might find that training or something like that on there. If we are aware of the fact, this predates me, but if we're the ones who developed it, there's probably something out there still.
Sure.
Danny asks, let's see, is supplemental security income and or Social Security disability benefits planning provided to people?
Yes, well, again, in recent years, where that's taken on a bigger role, and the state has had more like benefit specialists throughout the state in the different regions. So we have employment staff are instructed certainly to work with benefit specialists in each area to kind of help them track throughout their employment journey where they're at and how it's going to affect them, how to report wages. So that's kind of one of the first steps when we start working with people on employment, that we kind of make a connection with the benefit specialists in the area. And we have them in each of the areas, the Worcester area, up in the Fitchburg area, and down in the Milford area where we operate.
Great. So the next question is, how can participation in community life lead to successful employment?
Well, I think what comes to mind to me is, certainly as people get out there and experience more, spend more time with people, maybe demonstrate some talents or gifts they have, it certainly affects their confidence and their ability how they feel about themselves. Also gives them an opportunity to impress others, and so maybe improves their marketability and their opportunities to kind of go in the direction towards employment. But our experience has been, again, people that are somewhat timid around getting out there, it often is a confidence issue, and is they've gotten out there, and when we say get out there, we again have an approach of really trying not necessarily get out there just to get a job, but try to find out what people's true passion is. So I used the example before of somebody that's creative or artistic, or maybe somebody likes music, and help them try to pursue that in the community, or their groups they could join, their music groups, or just around. We even had a situation a few years back where we had this fellow the staff was working with. He was fascinated with rocks and stones, and the staff actually found a mineral club that he was able to join and get together with other people on a regular basis to kind of connect around that. So that kind of meeting people where they're at, finding what they're interested in, and getting them to kind of build relationship with people that have similar interests is kind of the direction we try to pursue. And again, oftentimes that might lead them in the direction towards employment.
Right. I mean, the more sort of you're out there, that hopefully the larger your social network you're developing. And, I mean, that's just, and that has a lot to do with social capital. That's sort of a word I think people know, a lot what that means is, those resources and who you know and the different groups that you're associated with to have, to increase your sort of quality of life. And so the more you're out there, I think the more chance you would have of making a connection that could lead to employment. One example is that we have, as I mentioned, these advisory councils, and there's an opportunity for one of the people we serve to go before that council to sort of present who they are and the kinds of things that we're interested in. And so that has happened, on and off. And this particular individual went to the one in Milford and presented and even just sort of described what he was then interested in. And usually it's not this easy, but one of the community members was looking for someone to actually meet that very job, and he was hired like the next week. So I think the more you're out there, the more chances you're going to then run into something or hear about something that would be of interest to you.
Sam asks, we have challenges engaging some individuals who have a permanent housing voucher. Aside from discussing community involvement and having income, what are some ways we can highlight the value of working to participants?
I'm not sure if I understand.
Are you saying that the housing voucher is a barrier for the person?
So I'm going to try to take a guess. I'm guessing the idea of having everything safe for forever, their housing is permanently taken care of, their basic needs are taken care of. Aside from discussing community involvement of them and having more of an income, increasing what they take home so they can live and do more, what are some ways that they can highlight the value of working to those sort of individuals?
Well, all right, if money isn't, I think certainly increasing people's awareness of what other people are experiencing, number one, I think, again, we try to go in the direction of what is the person most interested in, and sometimes that kind of opens up in the direction towards employment. If somebody's feeling totally safe in their situation, they don't need money, so we're almost trying to get them to see the value of becoming more independent, standing on their own, and maybe there's ways we would try to emphasize that when somebody does do things that go in that direction, that we would really get behind that and recognize that. So we would try to solidify that value in that person, so they become less dependent and see the importance of becoming more independent.
Or interdependent, right? Yeah. That they're, that there's sort of giving and receiving in sort of outside. But some of the systems that we have in place sort of breed dependency. Right. I mean, it's certainly an issue that at times we too have to try to break through.
Tom asked an interesting one. He asked for any suggestions on how to keep employers engaged when you don't have an individual that is a good fit for them at that time.
One of the things when, as part of the CBFS programs, we actually utilize the IPS, individual placement and support approach, which people are familiar with that. It's more of a, the people we serve, if they express any interest in employment, we try to act on that and move in that direction. But one of the things that's unique to that model, the approach they had around job development, was often they referred to it as the 3 cups of tea approach, where the first cup is you just make the connection with the person to set up an appointment with an employer. Second one, you actually go in and to some degree interview the employer around their needs and get them to see that you're there as another resource for them. You're trying to find out what their ideal employee would be. And then the third step, or third cup in this matter, would be that maybe you create an opportunity for one of your folks to interview there. But using that model, I think it leaves the opportunity to continue to stay in touch with that employer because, again, maybe you don't have the employee for them, but maybe you can still act as a resource to connect them that somebody else does. So I think when you don't have that person, you can still play that role of being an employer because you're all in the same business. You're all trying to create opportunities and fill those opportunities. But
so we do have in Central Massachusetts is it called an employment collaborative?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's several agencies that. So if
employment network.
Employment. So if for some reason we couldn't fill a slot, we would put that out there to the collaborative, and maybe they have someone that could fit that slot.
Right.
Sure. Next couple last questions that we have time for here. Next one is, do you have any suggestions for an employer reluctant to split a full-time position into 2 part-time shifts to try to find roles for people?
I think on the employer's side, I think if they're familiar with the folks involved, we've seen that happen at times. It can be positive. It can lend flexibility. You got 2 people that kind of are involved. So I think we've done that in the past. I think it's a matter if they're satisfied with both people. Talking about splitting a job into like 2 part-time jobs, that if the people involved are qualified, usually it's not a problem. I mean, we've done that.
Yep. All right. Next one up is Janet asks, even with work incentive planning and assistance, we still have a problem getting people to try to get back to work. We also have the barrier of community and work incentive coordinators not even wanting to talk to people unless they are already working. What do you suggest?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a little different than what our experience been, but I sense maybe it's a numbers game. That if we did have some points when we had less benefit specialists, so they would tend to only prioritize people at certain stages. So it sounds like it's a bigger system issue about how many resources are available to kind of help people. We did, when that did occur, when we had less, I want to say 5 years ago, when we had less of these benefit specialists, the UMass Medical Group that has a Work Without Limits department, they put on some trainings with the Department of Mental Health. So the idea was to train some of our existing staff to become pretty skilled around benefit specialists, so they wouldn't be the total person, but they could be an extension of that. So that probably is the closest we've come to around feeling the struggle with that and what was done about that. And we did send staff. It was almost like a boot camp where they would send staff to like 3 intense days of learning a lot. In fact, they still offer that around here. So they train staff up to become very knowledgeable about benefits, so they can help to whatever degree they can and maybe offset some of the overload on the benefit specialists.
Sure. And then the final question we have today is, how do you increase the reciprocity of community members to provide real opportunities?
Well, it's I mean again, it takes two to have reciprocity, and so in a number of our initiatives where we then say renovate a playground or put up a mural or repair the railings of a community's library, always working with people from Open Sky Alternatives, but also working with their volunteers. And we do that in little ways, and we do that in larger ways, like the White Mill and all that it gives back to the community. By us giving back, we have seen how then communities are more open to who we are, and will consider giving back to us. And if I have a choice of them writing a check for $50 or providing a job or willing to volunteer at Alternatives, I'll take the job and volunteer every time.
Well, thank you, Dennis, and thank you very much for your time, Bill, as well, for answering everyone's questions today, and for everyone who joined us. It was really quite informative. I appreciate it. The next Ask Me Anything for everyone in attendance session is coming soon, and you should receive an announcement by email in the weeks ahead. In the next few days, you should also get a survey about your experience today. We'd love to get any feedback you have about today's event. So thank you again, and we look forward to having you join us in the future. Thank you, Dennis and Bill.
Thanks,
I really appreciate it, guys.
Okay. Thanks. Take care.
Bye now.